Hi! I am so glad you're here. I love D&D. I haven't played it in years because I just don't have a group to play with. So instead I watch a lot of gameplay content and I have a lot of series that I really love. So I thought it'd be fun to do another D&D inspired video. But I had too many ideas. So we're gonna do a whole D&D inspired month. I hope you like D&D, or if not, you're open to it because that's what we're doing this month. Every week this month, hopefully, I'm gonna make something, either a creature or a cosplay, inspired by one of my favorite D&D series. At the end of the month, I'll be combining them all into one delicious video. Again, hopefully. We're kicking things off this month with a creature. As soon as these things were mentioned, I knew I had to make one, or two, or three. We'll see how it goes. We're making nut pugs from Cloudward Ho, a Dimension 20 campaign. These nutty little guys are just too cute. And much like the party does in the show, I want several of them. According to Brendan's description, nut pugs are little box turtle-sized pugs. So cute. Little box turtle-sized pugs with a walnut shell around them. And they're apparently an invasive species, which means taking just far too many of them is actually a good thing. Just saying.
Jumping in real quick to say that these nut bugs are adorable and this campaign that I'm describing sounds really fun, but I know I have some younger viewers and I just feel like I have to clarify that this show is not for kids. And this likely won't be the last time I make this message throughout this month, but just so you know, it's not for kids. There are some more mature things that happen in the campaign, in any of the campaigns in Dimension 20. There are mature themes, mature language that I don't think are for kids. Not yet, anyway. Okay, that's all.
To make our little nut pugs, I thrifted this blanket, and I think it'll be a good neutral color. I think it's just fuzzy enough to be a comfy little guy, but not so long that it looks too fuzzy for a pug, because they don't typically have long fur, I don't think. To make the shells, my plan right now is to use my heat gun and some leftover plastic sheets from my calcifer project, and hopefully heat form some walnut shell shapes to go around the pugs. Now, as far as patterns go, I couldn't find one online that I liked enough for this project. They were either too realistic for what I wanted them to be, or a little too dimensional, which isn't really what I'm going for. So I'm gonna have to draft my own, and I'm a little unsure about that process. So let's get to work and see how it goes. First, I searched how big box turtles can grow for a size reference and found it can be anywhere between 4 and 7 inches. I sketched out the general shape of the belly first, that way I'd have sort of a guide on how to make the back, which is in 2 pieces with a slight curve to try and make it a little more round. I cut those pieces out and used some pink fleece to test the pattern. Based on how big the body was, I then sketched the legs. And sewed the legs together and stuffed them with soft scraps, and even stitched in some little toes by looping the thread around the foot. And once both back legs were built and attached, I started on the front legs. I had started watching Cloudward Ho a little while ago, but I never finished it after having to pause the subscription. But I've got it back now and decided to watch the rest while making the nut pugs, which was a lot of fun. The very last piece I made was the head, which I hand sewed together and stuffed with soft scraps. Okay. I have some notes, but I think the prototype pug, my proto-pug, I think it looks pretty good. I love his little feet. Got some little toe beans going on there. I do think that they are overstuffed, and it's giving him a kind of weird... He looks like he's ready to pounce. And it's also not filled with polyfill because I didn't want to waste polyfill on the prototype. I do want to finish this one just so that that wasn't a whole day of work for nothing. He's kind of cute. He's pretty cute. He needs a face. Moving on to the real pugs. I'm a real boy! The legs could use a little more chunk, for lack of a better word. I don't like how I did the tail here. It looks okay. It looks fine. I think it'll look different with the fur material. It's also what I have to keep reminding myself is that it's going to behave just slightly different than the fleece. But overall, I like the body shape. It's nice and squishy. He's got some roundness to him. I think the head could be a bit bigger. These seams that I have on the side, I thought were going to make it round, but I don't think they're necessary because this material stretches. I think it should just kind of puff out a little bit. You know, he's a weird little guy and a little bit like a raw turkey, but I think I've learned the lessons I need to with this one to make the real ones. So we're gonna do that tomorrow. For this video, I also decided to dress like the characters from the campaign, so outfit number 1 is inspired by Van Chapman, the airship's bosun. After After looking at my proto-pug again, I realized just how much it looks like an uncooked chicken, but that just inspired me to get to work on the real ones even more. I drew up thicker legs and an oval shape for the head off camera, then set to work laying the blanket out. Seeing the potential in the fuzzy material made me so excited to get started, so I pinned the pieces down and cut them out. It was at this point that I remembered I wanted to make more than one, but hadn't decided on how many. Because this is a D&D inspired month, I decided to let the dice decide. I grabbed my homemade D4 and gave it a roll. And got a 4! We're making 4 nut pugs, which some could say is 3 or 4 too many, and to that I say, you're probably right, but we're doing it anyway. So I cut out 3 more sets of the pattern, and I'll admit, seeing the crowded stacks of fabric next to me was intimidating, but we must honor the roll. Yeah, that was me reacting to the nut bugs having to make a roll in the campaign, and I won't tell you what happens, but I clearly had a lot of feelings about it. With all of the pieces cut out, I just started sewing. I sewed the sides of the bodies and the legs on the machine, but attaching the pieces all to each other required a lot of hand sewing, as the junctures were just too small to do on the machine. I then cracked open one of my rice socks to steal some rice for their little paws. To make the tails, I used the hemmed edge of the blanket and just stitched it into a curled shape. Once the back legs and tail were on, I could really see the vision starting to come together. For this first one, I used blanket scraps to stuff the body before attaching the front legs and the head. Then I had to figure out how I was going to make the face and ear details. I did have some cow print material that I thought I could just use the brown part of, but when it bent, the white roots were really visible, and I didn't like that, so instead I just cut into my old brown curtains. At first I cut out a jowl piece and just attached that on its own, but it looked a bit too much like Ron Swanson, so I figured out that it needed a mouthpiece to go underneath, which I ladder stitched onto the face. I then cut out the ears, stitched those together on the machine, and then hand sewed them onto the head, and our first little pug was nearly done. The first of 4! I decided to take a small break from the sewing to figure out how I was going to make the nose and eyeballs. I had a few sticks of black hot glue in my bin, so I decided to use one of my resin molds and make the shapes in there by pouring the glue in and holding a small jump ring into the pool of glue while it set, giving me a place to stitch it onto the face. For the noses, I also shaped little nostrils by melting the bottom edge with the glue gun, which worked pretty well. I then brushed on some wrinkles with eyeshadow, which added just a little bit of dimension. Alright, we've got one little pug mainly done. I think he could use some more detail with the coloration, which I did on his face with some eyeshadow. I think I need to space the eyes out just a touch more to really give them that bug-eyed look. By making this one completely first, I've realized there are some shortcuts I can make with the rest of them. The original plan was to sew on all these little paw pads, but you can't really even tell they're there until I sewed the little toe beans into place by just stitching some loops to make toes. On this one, which I attached the legs, I just sewed them closed without paw pads, and I'm just gonna see if the other two even really need paw pads, because in my opinion, the fuzzy fabric is so busy that you can't even really tell the paw pads are there at all. And if you can't tell that they're there, then they're not there for aesthetic reasons, and therefore it just doesn't add anything but more work. And I have enough of that left to do as it is. So I think I'm gonna just do that with the rest of them, not add the paw pads. I'm also going to put the ears between the head slices this time. That way they're already on the little head and I don't have to attach them afterwards. I also am going to test on the next one not ladder stitching the closed seams like I did on this one, because this fabric doesn't really fray that much. It was a lot of really tedious work. It took so long to get his little face together that I'm gonna see how it looks, and if I don't like it, I'll do the work on the next two. Sewing a lot of the pieces together, making him entirely, and making all of their little noses, as well as another pair of eyeballs, took all day today. Now that I've mentioned that, I do have to make the other eyeballs. I'm out of black hot glue sticks, so I only managed to get 2 pairs of eyes out of that. So hopefully tomorrow we will finish up all the sewing. Now that I kind of know more what I'm doing, it shouldn't take as long as this one did, and I've given myself a pretty good head start. And then we'll start making the shells, but we'll talk more about that tomorrow. Outfit number 2 is based on Maria Yankova, the airship's pilot and a skilled tinkerer, so I made sure to have my measuring tape on my belt, as that's kind of my tinker tool as a sewist. I did a lot of this off camera because it was so repetitive, but I hand sewed all of the legs onto the little bodies I had prepared. And now they just needed some stuffing and their heads attached. So I repeated the process from the day before, turning the bodies inside out, putting rice in their little feet, and stuffing their legs and bodies with a mixture of blanket scraps and polyfill. To make their heads, I was more thoughtful of the process and attached the ears directly to the head by sandwiching them in between the head pieces, then turning them all inside out. I did try to attach the mouth and jowl pieces to one headpiece before sewing it together to see if that would be easier, but it wasn't. So I took that off, and after all of the heads were stuffed and attached to their bodies, it was time to add their little facial details. Look at them. I did run out of black hot glue though, so I decided to use some pearls for the other 2 pups' eyeballs and just paint them black. While those 2 dried in front of a tiny fan, I worked on really shaping up the others' faces by giving them a little haircut and adding some more eyeshadow detail. While all the sewing's done, at least, each one is a little bit different, which is fun. On our little fellas that have the beads for eyes, I might put a protective coating just so that the paint doesn't immediately scratch off, and leave that to dry overnight, but they are still missing a very important piece. They're missing their shells. So we're gonna figure that out tomorrow, where I have a couple ideas and we might do them all. Outfit number 3 is inspired by Maxwell Gotch, the 7th son of the Gotch family who owns the airship. Keys are kind of important to Maxwell in the campaign, so I made sure to wear all of the keys I had. Now, to make the shells, I decided to do a mixture of heat moldable plastic shells and paper clay shells, just to have some variation. For the paper clay shells, I had to first give them a structure, so I cut up an old pizza box into strips of various sizes so I could hot glue them together in what I called a skeleton for the shell. That day I was watching the last episode of the campaign, which will explain a lot of the big reactions you'll see. Look at you! To give the strips of cardboard something to stick to, I made a base piece in the shape of their bellies, which, looking back, I should have made them more round like they are in the sketch, but I think my brain was stuck on box turtles, so I made it more like a turtle shell than a nutshell. The rest of that process was just looping the cardboard strips over the pug and overlapping the cardboard pieces so that it not only gave the shell a stronger structure, but also something for the clay to cling to. The more the pieces overlapped, the more surface area there was for the clay to stick to. Now to make the paper clay. I had seen a recipe for toilet paper clay online the day before, but I didn't want to use toilet paper on this, so I used some old packing paper I had saved instead. To make the clay, I also needed school glue and cornstarch, so I had those at the ready. I'll also link the account I used as a reference in the caption. First, I cut the paper into thin strips, put that all into a bowl, realized I needed a bigger bowl, then soaked it all in hot water for about 30 minutes. I then used my trusty immersion blender to blend the paper and water into a pulp, which, because I used brown packing paper, it looked horrifying. Because I had so little glue left, I really watered it down to shake as much glue off the sides of the bottle as possible, and decided not to add back any water due to the glue being so watery. At that point, I wasn't really following the recipe anymore, so I just added the cornstarch as needed to thicken it up. Eventually, I got it into a workable consistency and slapped a layer of paper clay over the cardboard gelatins and set those aside. While the paper clay dried, I turned to my heat moldable plastic and my heat gun to shape some shells. This took me over 2 hours to do, was extremely tricky, and only after both the bottom and top were done did I realize they were too small. This method was not working. Okay, that didn't go very well. I don't know why Calcifer went so well and this just didn't, but I don't like the shape that I got at all. I made his little belly plate too small and I just could not get, he looks like he's got a pistachio shell instead of a walnut shell. That's what this looks like. I think I'm gonna try kind of a combination of sort of the cardboard skeleton of a shell. Instead of covering it with more paper clay because I don't have any more school glue and therefore cannot make any more of the clay. I'm gonna see if I have any air dry clay and I'll build on one of them with that, maybe make the other one also with a cardboard shell and cover that with fabric maybe? I don't know. I'm gonna play around with it and see what we can do because this was not it. Look at that baby. Oh my goodness. Sleepy baby. So back to the cardboard I went, making 2 more cardboard gelatins for our remaining pugs. I'm not sure what happened here, but I made this one rather small as well, so I decided to try and make the shell out of fabric on this one as a test. I made some squiggles out of hot glue and then tried to pinch the fabric around it to hold and make the walnut wrinkles. And it sort of worked, but not well enough for me to do the same thing on the last pug. Instead, I opted to make this one using Model Magic, which I found was too dry to stick to the foil or the cardboard, so instead I rolled it out into long strips, glued those on as wrinkles, and then put foam clay over top in thin sheets that could be lightly pressed around the wrinkles. Alright. Okay, this is taking me significantly longer than I thought it would. This entire project, I wanted to be editing by now. Now, I think the texture is fun. It's a little inconsistent, but I think it gives walnut. The only problem is I think I made this shell a little too small. He looks like he's wearing a coat. In the illustration, the shell goes well beyond their heads. I just couldn't figure out how to make that work because I want to be able to remove them from the shells. So they already aren't super accurate to the art. In the art, you can see that the top shell and bottom shell aren't actually connected, but if I wanted to be able to slide them in and out of their shells, I had to complete it instead of sewing them directly to the pugs. Interesting results so far. He just looks like he's wearing a sweater. It's not my favorite result. I'm hoping that the paper clay shells will look a little bit better. I do really like the texture that I got on this one. I was going to use all Model Magic, but my Model Magic was way more dry than I thought it was, and it refused to stick to the foil or the cardboard. Yeah, I don't know. This isn't exactly going to plan, but I'm hoping that they will still be adorable and will have been worth, what is it, going on 5 days now? The paper clay shells are drying in front of my dehumidifier to hopefully draw out some of that moisture overnight. Hopefully they'll be ready for some additional detail work tomorrow and a good paint job. I don't know how to finish the insides of the shells. I'm thinking hot gluing some fabric on the inside because I'm not quite sure what to do there. But for now I'm going to set the foam clay next to the paper clay ones so it too can dry out. We'll hopefully finish this up tomorrow. Outfit number 4 was inspired by Straka, a giant mechanical bird beast. I am Straka. Our 2 paper clay shells were dry now and quite hard, which was nice, though the little bits that were supposed to come down in the front needed some shaping. Our foam clay shell almost felt like it hadn't dried at all, but it turns out my hands were just cold, so it was time to paint. I started painting the paper clay shells when I remembered I meant to make some wrinkles first using hot glue. I wasn't able to make enough clay to make the wrinkles that way, so hot glue seemed like the best option. On the first one, I made squiggles as thin as the glue naturally comes out, which resulted in an okay texture, so on the other one, I made the squiggles much thicker by pouring out more glue, and I think I liked that one better. I put a base coat down of this beige color and added some highlights and shadows around the wrinkles on all of the nut pugs. I think I'm gonna call it good. I feel like it's one of those things where I could fiddle with it forever, honestly, and then we'll never have a reveal if I don't just stop myself somewhere. We'll talk about how they turned out in the outro. I'm gonna maybe change up their facial features just a little bit. It's just going to be maybe painting on some tiny little teeth. So I'm just gonna do that off camera, and that means it's time for the reveal. so gosh darn cute. Okay, I have notes. Each of these little nut pugs was created a tiny bit differently. As I went through the process, I kind of learned what worked better and tried to improve the process as I went through. The blanket material was nice and stretchy and soft and easy to kind of squish into shape. I tried sewing the little snout piece on. Oh, you're slipping. Oh, you're slipping. I tried sewing the mouthpiece on before sewing the head together, thinking that it would be easier. It wasn't easier, and in fact it was in like the wrong place because it was kind of hard to judge where to place it, accounting for the seam around the head, which was a little bit different on each of them. I'm not sure why. I think it has something to do with the stretchy material of the blanket. So going forward, all of the mouths and eyes were all attached individually. I also did not put the little paw pads on the bottom because after doing it on this one, it didn't make as noticeable a difference, and it just took so darn long, and I did not want to do it 16 times. So the rest of them just have these little bean sprout paws. They're all very different. Oh, I'm gonna sneeze. Each pug is very much its own. Much like snowflakes, no two pugs are exactly alike. Between the facial differences and the shell differences, so two of them is it you two? My nut pugs. Okay, everything's fine. We're gonna chill and we're gonna stay put. Between their eyes being different materials and their shells all being different materials, they are all very different from each other. Oh, don't go in your shell. He looks like he's hiding in his shell. Don't go in. This was the foam clay shell. I think the texture on this one is the best because I think it looks most like a walnut, which is, you know, the point. But this model magic underneath a thin layer of foam clay just resulted in a nice, subtle but very defined texture pattern, and I really enjoy how that turned out. Because I think it was the perfect texture, I gave it to my perfect boy with the finished jowls. But yeah, I think this is the best boy, but they're all the best boys because just look at them. They're too cute. Go with your siblings. Look at that. I love how these little guys turned out, and if you do too, you can let me know by hitting the like button. And if you want to see what I'm doing next and join the channel, hit the subscribe button. We are doing a D&D themed month, so each week is going to have a D&D series themed project. And if you want to know when I post, hit the notification bell. YouTube will let you know. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye!